Have you ever wondered what your life would be like after you've hit your rock bottom? Would you try to dig your way out? Maybe get back to the surface? This week on Unfuck Your Life with Tog Chesterfield, Tog shares their first attempt to try and unfuck their life. It all started with starters and led to a rather public smell event. Welcome to Unfuck Your Life with Tog Chesterfield on 101.7 FM The Grack. I'm Tog Chesterfield, a recently unemployed, single, and sober 42-year-old trying to pick up the pieces and unfuck my life after I hit rock bottom. I'm taking you along as I try new things and attempt to embrace life, no matter what happens along the way.
Unfuck Your Life with Tog Chesterfield.
So, welcome to the show. It's now 5:01 p.m. and I'll be with you here for your commute, or while you prepare your dinner, or while you watch your kid play chess at a grade 3 competition that they're definitely gonna lose. Anyways, I'm your uninvited guest for this evening. Tonight I'll be bringing you a behind-the-scenes look at the great sourdough starter incident of mine. It's all how I'm trying to unfuck my life, doing these kinds of things to try to lift my life off of rock bottom. Because honestly, rock bottom is the worst. Rock bottom basically, well, it looks like my couch. I've owned this couch for 13 years now, I guess. I got it at Crate & Barrel because they had one that had some kind of moisture barrier in it. I saw it advertised and I needed it for a cat I lived with back then, Kevin. Kevin whizzed all over everything, so I needed that moisture barrier in my couch because it included couches, his whizzing territory. I went into Crate & Barrel and I told the nice person in the couch section that I wanted something Kevin could pee on. And she tilted her head and squinted at me really hard for a while, probably trying to tell if I was serious or trying to have a laugh or something. She sussed out that I was serious and that Kevin was real and a cat. Kevin wasn't a roommate or something. Anyways, then she pointed at one of the couches. It was a couch her daughter had bought because she had really small kids and it had that moisture barrier. Drop juice or something on it. Yeah, my daughter got this one because she has really small kids. They're really messy, so I guess it might stop urine too. Sold. Don't you want to try sitting on it first? Oh, okay. Still sold. So Kevin tore up one end of this couch and christened every cushion right away. And then Kevin died a year later. But here it is. It's handling my second bout with major depression, the one that layers on top of my pretty persistent one. But this time it's whiz-free. But it's also Kevin-free. I love that end of the shredded couch when you can't see it, but I'm pointing at it. And I really miss Kevin too. My old flattened couch is great though, actually. It's real comfortable if you just mash the crushed cushion foam just right. It's perfect for depression, since the seats are as wide as a twin bed. Basically, you can sleep all night and then come out here and ruminate all day on the thing and barely move a muscle. You could pee on it too, but I don't. Which is good because I've had to take on another new roommate now that I'm renting out my old office to help pay my mortgage because I lost my job and everything. Anyways, Lance Stick, who made a guest appearance on last week's show, my old roommate now. Lance left after he decided to open a saltine shop, a really fancy one in East Grackleton, and he wanted to live a little bit closer to work. So now it's Eaton Evergreen. Eaton has taken my old office now. I should get back to that sourdough story. That's what we're all here for, I guess. But actually, we'll be back after the break with that story. This is Unfuck Your Life with Tog Chesterfield.
Unfuck your life with Tog Chesterfield.
So back to the show and how I'm trying to unfuck my life. I'm Tog Chesterfield. So in August, I took that sourdough workshop. I took it online from an amazing sourdough artist called Pastel Pumpernickel. Apparently that's her real name and not a foodie stage name or anything. She's known as the best sourdough artist for those designs that she puts on the top loaf of the bread, making these really, really decorative loaves. Something about the texture of the crust and how that texture lends itself to the intricacy options for the loaf design. But the talent is most amazing to me of Pastel's is she seems to have sorted out the best sourdough starter recipe for these loaves. And I had this grand idea that I could start a business selling sourdough starter. It keeps growing, the starter. You can feed it scraps. Maybe I could make a special sourdough starter and sell it to local bakers, is what I thought. And I'd work with my hands, and that would really help unfuck my life. That was the idea anyways. At the workshop, Pastel talked about how beautiful starter can be.
All of you to look at this. Every sourdough starter is unique. It can be active or sluggish. It can look foamy. They can have a personality, preferences, if you will. You might even make some beautiful, what I call hooch, which is clear and yellow and totally normal.
But Pastel didn't divulge any secrets about her own starter during the workshop, which was a shame. I was fascinated by the sourdough starter. It's alive and it grows from the organisms in the air in your environment. You have to get the feeding and temperature and the humidity and water just right. The starter is the most fascinating part of a loaf. It lives, it's alive, it has history. You can pass it on and you can grow it endlessly. It seemed like an excellent thing to grow a business around. My product just keeps creating itself, and it doesn't even take up a ton of space. And I needed that space for my new tenants after all. And maybe if I do get
the daily reconnect with deHaan, you might feel dissociated, isolated, or perhaps like you aren't really a part of the world. Whatever you're experiencing, together we will try to reconnect to the world and get motivated to make a difference again. Episodes will be released Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings every week when the podcast launches March 3rd. Subscribe to the Daily Reconnect wherever you find your podcasts from StereoForest.com.
And I'll be able to take my office space back here in the townhouse, so I don't have to be recording the radio show in my kitchen or the bedroom. But after the workshop, I was inspired. What if I incorporated some flavors or some kind of essence into the starter? Maybe lavender or patchouli would make a loaf worthy of a student of Pastel Pumpernickel. I looked some of the things up that you can feed it, and you can do that to add nutrition or flavor. Things that wouldn't kill the starter, things like figs or potatoes or even beans. I started feeding my test starters with a bunch of different add-ins. Ideas I found from the internet, of course. I figured out the perfect amounts on the perfect feeding schedule, and eventually I created a sourdough starter that turns out had a pretty unique smell after adding those lima beans. Beans I recently got from bulk bins. 20% off your first purchase if you mention me, Tog. I let the starter do all of that fermentation, and I thought the scent was rather unique, very decorative smell-wise. But the smell kind of took over my townhouse. Hell, I couldn't even smell Kevin's pee on my couch anymore. I always got a whiff of it when I sunk into a cushion. because I found out that moisture barrier didn't really work too well. But now the townhouse, it was all lima bean. Turned out, fermentation from the starter, it smelled a lot like Kevin's Whiz, actually, after it got at those lima beans. But my starter, it made the best loaf. I even went around and got a loaf from Buttertub Bakery and a loaf from the place across the street that they compete with, Butter Side Up. I discovered that the loaves I made with my starter were just as good as theirs, I thought. So I started sending out some samples to Buttertub and Butter Side Up, and I also made a small website to sell the starter locally. I sent the starter around using Grack, which is the town's food delivery service here, as most of you probably know. And that's when the smell event started. I first heard about it on WBOT 12:30 a.m. actually.
Tonight's top story. Grackle Run's newest delivery specialist reports that his car has been taken over by the smell of what local smell experts suggest might be cat urine.
Yeah, after I parked my car in the sun for lunch, I noticed the smell right away.
More after the break.
Yeah, I knew that smell. I knew it really well. And that was the same kid who picked up my first batch of starters. But a ton of new orders started pouring in from the bakeries, and I started to deliver them myself in my Ford Transit. I think the bakers didn't really complain on their end because of the superior loaves that they were producing with my starter, and they got into some kind of weird competition with each other across the street to see who could make or sell the best loaves. The bakeries, they kept ordering because of the loaf quality, but eventually they learned that if the customer left their loaf out too long at home, the loaf would start to smell, well, like Kevin's Whiz. And this started to lead to some very critical Facebook posts and call-ins to WBOT 12:30 a.m. about urine smelling bread. Turns out that the Grackle Run kid with the smelly car, well, he was using his dad's, the town mayor's, 93 Toyota Supra to make the deliveries. And that smell lingered in the back, and it reminded him of his recently passed cat, Flapjack. And that's why he banned selling my starter within the town limits. Oh, it's time for the weather.
I'm driving in the car. Get ready for the weather.
Tonight's weather for your drive at 5 with Unfuck Your Life is brought to you by Don's Dodge Neon dealership on the I-47. Tonight, Grackleton is expecting an irregular pattern from the west that is going to push bands of rain across Grackleton West. So if you're in Grackleton West, grab your umbrellas. And that's it for the weather on your drive at 5 from Don's Dodge Neon on the I-47. Turn south after the rest stop at the Neon Dodge Neon sign. Oh, I know that one.
You just learned all about the weather. Driving in the car.
Unfuck your life with Todd Chesterfield.
So making that smelly starter was my first pivot back from rock bottom. My first attempt to really make a go at life after everything fell apart. It got me off the couch. It got me experimenting. It got me being creative again. It got me feeling creative again. It also got me in the kitchen for the first time in a long time. I literally started from scratch with a loaf from scratch. And the whole thing, it fell flat. Or I was catching some bad luck or whatever, but I tried at least. The first thing I tried in a really long time. And after the potato incident, I sure needed a reminder that I still had a restart in me. Some creativity left in me. And I could be useful for something. Even if that something smelled like Kevin.
Excuse me. Hi, Tog. It's, Eaton?
Yeah, no, I remember.
Oh, cool. Anyways, I just have a quick question. Sorry to bother you here.
I was just wondering, you said that I should take half the fridge. I was just wondering if you meant that I take the top half, like the top 2 shelves, or the bottom 2 shelves, or the left half. I don't know how many inches it is, or the right half. Yeah, I said left, right half, or yeah, if you meant the top. I and I was just wondering, it's full of potatoes. What do you want? Do you want me to move the potatoes somewhere? Yeah, I'll be down in a second. I'll move them for you. I'm just finishing the radio show. Oh, thank you. I have a good show. Have a good show. Anyway, yeah. So I guess that's it for this week's Unfuck Your Life with Tog Chesterfield here on 101.7 FM The Grack. Stay tuned for Canning Corner at 6 for How to Preserve Small Plums.
You have been listening to Unfuck Your Life with Tog Chesterfield, a StereoForest production. This episode was written, directed, edited, produced, and all voices were by deHaan. You can find all show notes and sign up to get notified about new episodes on StereoForest.com. The Daily Reconnect with deHaan. You might feel dissociated, isolated, or perhaps like you aren't really a part of the world. Whatever you're experiencing, together we will try to reconnect to the world and get motivated to make a difference again. Episodes will be released Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings every week when the podcast launches March 3rd. Subscribe to the Daily Reconnect wherever you find your podcasts from StereoForest.com.